Welcome to my humble little office. My name is R. Keith Andrews. I am a spiritual guide and paranormal adept. The journey continues today on July 8th, 2021 at approximately 8:54 a.m. PST. Well, time to get to work on some other little projects I've got going on. The office itself is set up the way I desire it for the most part. But time to get started on the advertising and what have you to deal with the second project. The second longest project I've got, the second largest. It's actually the longest one because I started a long time ago. But first project is the spreading of the word that I return to pass on. That word being, we can, working together, regardless of who you are, every creature, every entity in existence working together can turn this into a wonderful world. Into a world where we don't have war, where we don't have famine, where we don't have jealousy, but it's going to take the work of each and every one of you. Now, well, each and every one of us, because quite frankly, I'm included in this as well. Now, the reality is, if you are of the opinion that, if you're of the belief structure that there is no God, that man is the top of the totem pole, that man is all there is, then what have you got to lose other than making your life a better life that you're living in now? If you're only interested in the present, okay, as in while you're still alive, then it falls to you to work with the other people around you to make this life as enjoyable for you as possible, as stress-free. If you're of the belief, by whatever name, that some God or some higher being created all of this, then we have to run by the philosophy that every religion, every spiritual guide, every spiritual path is all created by the same individual. To that end, it falls to you to work with all of the other entities, and I do mean all of them, to make this a more enjoyable, more prosperous world for everybody, as much as possible. Now, there are always variants. Okay, there are always the ones that fit outside, and I don't use the term always very often. But in nature, because we are dealing with a whole lot of different variables, somebody is bound to have the idea that they belong at the top of the totem pole. Well, heck, in my belief structure, God is in the top of the totem pole for here, but he's not the top of the totem pole all over. Okay, for here, he is. Okay, in my opinion. Now, I do not expect you to believe absolutely everything I say. As a matter of fact, I am hoping you question pretty much everything. But how about giving us a thumbs up on the video? Subscribe to the channel because there's a lot of information coming out and we are getting more organized, more directed as far as what we're aiming at. But the backbone of the message is that working together, regardless of how you got here, working together, we can make this a more enjoyable world. Without the war, without the famine, without the greed, without the jealousy, it can be done. It's a long haul. It didn't take one night to get here. Okay. But it's been tried before to say, hey, let's get along. Matter of fact, I made that comment quite some time back. I was talking to somebody, and I told them, I made the comment that we should, get along. And immediately I got a personal email that came to me. Didn't even come through. It wasn't a response to the video. Well, it was, but it was directed right to my email that said, it's people like you asking people to get along. They're responsible for causing cults, for creating these cults, and making people struggle. And I'm thinking, like, okay, if the cult I am trying to make is everybody get along, then absolutely, if you want to call it a cult, go right ahead. Okay, the important factor is not the title you put on it. The important factor is whether or not you work together and get along. Okay, because I will tell you, talk to anybody that was in any conflict or any emergency situation. Talk to any doctor or any first aid attendant. You know, your first line of your first responders. Okay, now big thumbs up to them. But talk to any of them. It's easier to do their job if they're not in the middle of an explosion or if they're not in the middle of gunfire. It just is. This is why I say war is not something that brings peace. War brings quiet. You desire peace? Get along. I was talking to somebody one day, and they told me, they asked me flat out, well, if you believe in God, wouldn't it make sense that God picked one religion and said that was his? And I looked at the guy and I went, no, that ain't the way it happened. The way it happened was God took a look at all the religions that had been picked up. Now, understanding God created all of them in the first place, but God picked and took a look at all the ones that had taken root, the people had chosen to start following. Under any banner, he gave each one of them a part of the whole truth and said, when you're ready to know the truth, you'll get along and you'll find out from each other. And this is why I am not telling you walk away from whatever religion you have or whatever spiritual path you're on. Follow whatever works for you, because you do require the brotherhood, that connectivity. Whether it's a religion, whether it's a spiritual path, whether it's just simply the physical family that you have around you or that you choose to have around you. Okay, whatever the support group you've got that is helping you cope with today's world, that's the one you work with. But the trick is to get along with the rest of them. Do not look at them, do not treat them as though they're less people than you. Okay, if you're simply of the mindset that there is no God, we're all caught in a matrix and what have you, well, if you believe you're caught in a matrix type setup, in a program, well, let us understand the first rule of programming. Okay, if it can be built, it can be hacked. Which means if you believe you're stuck in a matrix, maybe it's time to start finding the hack fields. Okay, and that is hack fields, not hat fields. We've got enough situations like that. But perhaps it's time to start questioning the layout of the matrix and see how you can actually modify it. See, all of this is interconnected. And it's kind of comical because you see it in a lot of movies where they make comments that actually add up. Okay, and to paraphrase what was shown on the movie Doctor Strange, the MRI, the chakras, the X-rays, the nerve layouts, all of it are just little keyholes. They're little pinholes into a world that when you connect it all, it is all interconnected. It all fits together, much like a very big puzzle. Same as the idea that God created everything, or that man simply evolved with no assistance at all. Okay, just evolved as a natural order of things, and here we are. Or if you believe that we are all gods, or that we are all men, there's no future, there's no nothing. All of it is interconnected. Okay, now my belief structure aside, okay, because I believe that there's actually a combination of the two. Evolution and spirit and creationism, in my opinion, is actually interrelated. It's very much like science and religion. Science evolved to explain the inexplicable that spirituality had caught right off the bat. Okay, you think about into the origins of many of the belief structures as far as gods went. Like, let's go way back to caveman. Okay, thunderclaps, there's no sign for it. Oh my gosh, the thunder god is angry. Okay, in today's world, people don't believe in the thunder god as in the cause of thunder. Okay, mankind has evolved and science has evolved to the point that we know what causes it. Okay, at least we can explain it in a much more functional fashion. Taking that one step further, we have technology that can replicate it. And that is the big difference between humans and non-humans, or Terrans and off-worlders. Okay, the off-worlders that come here from different planets, and if you don't believe in them, that's okay. Okay, if you don't believe in them, you get to figure out how to explain the things that you can't explain. But the only difference between the off-worlders and humans is the level of their technology. They still have many of the same social problems, which is why, quite frankly, there are so many wars going on between them as well. Mankind is not alone in its conflict. But they are, humans and off-worlders are united in the concept that war does not bring peace. It brings quiet. But bigger guns, all that does is put things into a holdup until people can figure out a way around it. Okay, hence why you start with the club, you go to the sword, you go to the, you go to the bow and arrow. Actually, from the club, you had the club and the rock came out at the same time. Okay, then we get into guns, then you get into repeating guns, then you get into mortars and grenades and what have you, and then you get into bombs. Well, I will tell you, these are all evolutionary ways of killing each other. How about if we try something really, really twisted? How about if we find new and exciting ways to heal each other, to help each other, regardless of the person's background? Because the reality is, everybody in existence is at the same point in time right now. However you got to where you are, that's where you are. Okay, it doesn't essentially make any difference. You are here now. And in the here and now is the only time in existence that you can actually accomplish anything. It's a great thing to talk about time travel. And one day I will have to remember to do that, because I'll revisit it, because I've talked about it before. Time travel is possible going forward. You can absolutely vanish from this time, show up in the future time, but you can't get back. Same as you cannot go back in time and alter what's already happened. It just cannot be done. Okay. Now, that being said, when we take a look at that, and we take a look at what's come to be called the multiverse, okay, what you have to remember is there are echoes of every pattern of energy. Okay. And where a decision is made, and it can be a simple decision, and this is how extremely intricate it can be. See where my hand's sitting? Now, I can choose to leave my hand like that, or I can choose to close it into a fist. Now, on one issue, if I choose to leave it open, and I hit the table, it makes one sound. If I choose to close it and I hit the table, it makes another sound. These are both different multiverses. That may be the only difference, is that one little shift. Okay. But this neat little idea of, if you don't like the world you're in, you can just jump to another one, doesn't work well. There are safety mechanisms in place for that already. Okay. So, with that in mind, take a look at the way your life is right now and ask yourself one itty-bitty question. Are you content with the way your life is at this moment? If the answer is yes, great. You're probably the only person on the planet that is. Okay, there may be others out there. I'm a firm believer that if there's one out there, you can find another one. For me personally, not even remotely, well, remotely yes, but not even functionally remotely am I happy with the way things are for me right now. Hence why I am changing things. Okay, this is why things are being altered for me. Well, they're being altered for me, actually by me. Okay. And the nice part, yes, I'm puttering again, I know that. But the reality is, if you take a look at the way your life is, and you modify, you make changes to the way the energy is running around you, because energy cannot be destroyed. It is there. It will transform into something else. You can guide it where it's going. but you do not destroy it. Okay, so all in all, you're looking at a world that is very different, that can be very different from what it is. Now, I made some pretty serious mistakes. Okay, at the beginning of this year, a lot of people from the radio station that I'm on every Friday, the first Friday of every month, I'm on a radio station on the internet called Spaced Out Radio. And the show that I do, starting at 9, running to 11:30, is R. Keith Andrews and the ET Connection. Okay, where we discuss off-worlders, we discuss ancient races, their technologies, their cultures. Basically, it's a audience-driven show. Okay, but when I started, a lot of the people there were really asking me to get some of my information out on paper, or on video rather. I've got a lot of it out on paper already, and I finally found an artist that is sending me some work now that I'm hoping will work. Okay, I do have to get in touch with another one because I'm still looking at other odds and ends. And unfortunately, my schedule gets really out of hand. Okay, but, well, that worked well. Anyway, oh, by the way, just in case I didn't mention it earlier, this is a live recording, meaning I do not go, when this is over, all I do is go back and double check that I got the right date on it, and then I carry on. Okay, and then I post it as is with all the hiccups, all the quirks. If you ever run into me in person, you'll find that I talk the same way. I'll double back on myself sometimes, especially if I find myself using, or more to the point, when I find myself using the word if, want, can't. These are words that I will double back on and correct in the middle of a sentence, which is probably not the best way in the way of communication, but it is my way. Now, things are improving from my end, but I made a pretty serious mistake. When I started doing these recordings on March 6th of 2021, I've missed a few days, but the idea was to show people how I took the energy in my life and, using the same tools that I personally use, show you how you can change the world in your life and make the alterations so your life is happier. One of the biggest tools that I use is this, a list of different things I'm working on. Now, I don't expect you to read it, but you can see, at least I can, I've got the names here, and then afterwards, at the end of the names, I've got check marks on some. That's because the tasks that I put out for myself, which are only kept to 15-minute to half-hour tasks, I check them off and then write down the one at the bottom. So right now, I've already had 4. I'm in the middle of doing this one. And of course, as soon as I'm done this one, posting it is another task. And that's another 5 minutes or so. But they're just little tasks because I can look at the end of the day and go, oh, I got this much accomplished. Now, frankly, I've got a phone call coming in about 5 hours. And right about now, I'm still frankly debating whether I'm going to answer the phone. Because I haven't decided whether I really want to do what I've asked about. I've had a lot of thought about it. The issue that I'm debating right now is going into a hospital to get a voluntary operation to straighten out my teeth. Well, the reality is I have massive problems with hospitals. I'm healing from it. I figured out how. But right now, I still suffer from PTSD triggered by the hospital. And I'm talking about by proximity to it, never mind being inside it. So I am looking at alternative methods of solving a few things. But I will figure that one out. I'll probably let somebody know tomorrow when I do the next video. When I come back tomorrow. I will undoubtedly, because these are processes I go through myself. And the reason I share them with you is twofold. One, I'm kind of talking to myself. I mean, in case you hadn't noticed, I look into the camera a lot. That has something to do with the fact that I talk to myself, and actually, well, that's not true. I do argue with myself more often than I care to count. But take a look at the way your world is. Okay, Because when I started doing these recordings, it was like, okay, let's show people how I take my world and utilizing the knowledges that I have and the tools that I've got access to. The same tools I'm offering to you. Okay, I'm changing the way my world is working. To this end, okay, my energy level is coming up, my blood pressure is coming down, and I'm looking into a few things just to make that a little better. But I'm doing my level best to bypass modern medication. Now, understand something very critical on that statement. Modern medicine works for the most part, but it does make sense to double check with your doctor. Number one, yes, find out what it does to be positive, but find out the dangers. And once you've got the information from your doctor, not from Google Doctor, from an actual doctor, okay, once you've got that information, go and talk to a pharmacist that, again, you feel has their head on straight, and ask them about the cross complications from taking multiple different medications. Now, I am a firm believer that all things that your body generates can be healed. They can be corrected. But do understand, in most cases, like even in my case, as much as I believe that wholeheartedly, I broke this arm back in 2004. Okay, March 3rd of 2004. I broke it so bad I had to have it bolted. Now, much as I can heal awful quick, I did require the doctors to plate the thing in order to hold it in place long enough to heal it. Okay, and I'll tell you, given the minimal scar I ended up with, they did a good job, and they are trained for it. Now, there is no way on the planet or off the planet for that matter, that I would go to a mechanic or an engineer to put my arm back together. You go to a doctor. Okay. And much as they are definitely not perfect, they only have a wider array of knowledge compared to what you've got theoretically. And even if you yourself are a surgeon, my suspicion is it'll be easier to get somebody else to do the work than it will be to get yourself to do the work. Okay. But I got started showing people that. Then it became a slightly bigger issue. Okay. About how, because I got thinking about it. And if everybody corrects their own life, their own little part of the world, changes the energy so it runs better in your house, I know from practical experience, when you get the energy in your house running smoothly, you're more relaxed. You'll sleep better, you'll have more energy to do what you're doing when you're awake, and much more importantly, equally importantly, when you go out into the material world away from your home, the people you deal with out there, you will be more adept at handling their stresses, thereby creating an ongoing ripple effect that spreads out across the entire world to bring peace, to turn this world back into a more enjoyable, interactive life. Okay, now, you got one of two choices in life. You can choose war, okay, you can choose conflict, or you can choose peace. Now, personally, I choose peace. Okay. And that's simply because, well, frankly, being empathic myself, as many of you are, I physically not only pick up what people go through, but I physically pick up what animals, plants, and the planet herself, whom I came to call Itzhak, because that's what she gave me her name to as. Okay, I feel all of it. So the more I can draw the peaceful energy to me, the relaxed energy, the happier I am, the better I feel. Now, currently, I'm working on a few little things, but the real big message here that I return to give. Now, understand, I remember many of my past lives. I really have to go through and document them a little more, just because I like it on paper before I pass away. Now, I don't know how I'm going to will it to give it to myself after I pass away, but that ought to be an entertaining stunt. Okay. But, that's not a bad idea, really. Not so much will it, so much as write it, document it, and publish it, and then let somebody find it later. But the reality is, when we work together, okay, and this really applies to the spiritual guides that are out there, the major religions, the major spiritual guidelines. If you're talking about peace, if you're talking about God loves everybody, which I personally believe is true, okay, then God doesn't separate and go, because you don't worship me by this name, you're a lesser individual. Remember that term, everybody? It's kind of like God created everything. Well, if he created everything, then it's all together. Okay. And what I found is that the more energy I can draw to me that is of a peaceful, passive nature, if you will. Not exactly passive, because I don't tend to sit still a whole lot. Okay, but if we realize every single thing in existence has exactly the same path. And what I mean by that, well, same starting point, same destination. You start off, you're born. By whatever word you want to use, you're born. Okay, you go through life, do a bunch of different things, end up moving to a bunch of different places, and then you die. Or your corporeal body ceases to exist, or your non-corporeal one. Okay, now that being said, okay, understanding that part, I came back with a very simple message for people. And it's been passed before, but I remember things like, I remember Pompeii, I remember being in Pompeii. And a lot of these ones, a lot of these issues, I've had them corroborated by other people. Okay, I remember the Exodus, I remember Pompeii, I remember Manoah, I remember Sodom and Gomorrah. I remember 2,000 years ago. I remember the fall of the Roman Empire. As a matter of fact, I remember the slave revolts and the fall of the Roman Empire. Okay, I remember World War II. Now understand, we're talking past lives. Okay, and these are all ones that I have, and every one of these, not only have I documented at home here, and I mean, that's one of the books I'm in the process of putting together. Which, come to think of it, I'll have to do another count, but I might have 32 on the go when I add that one to it. Because I don't think that was on my list. But, as when I go through them, I will end up eventually publishing them. Okay. I don't know when. It's sort of one of those books that, well, I've got the Yldrbac Chronicles, which I will be putting out some access points to it today. I've got the advertising from my marketing consultant with Author House. Okay, and I will be posting on my Facebook page, Yldrbac. I will be posting on there and on Inner Voice Enterprises, as well as my homepage. You've seen them come up before. Okay, on different ways you can get a hold of my books. Okay, and of course, if you look at the list at the bottom of this video, you'll find a whole bunch of different things I've already written, I've already got in print that can be ordered straight through me, and a whole pile of contact points, whereby if you've got a question, absolutely reach out to me. I will do my best to answer it. Okay. In the meantime, I'm going to get on with the rest of my day. You get on with the rest of your day, and we'll talk again tomorrow. Until then, take care of yourselves and each other, and for pity's sakes, stay positive.